friend is one that you bleed together, you feel together, you enter into life together, you care together. As a result, you deepen together. See, I don't think we need richer people today or brighter people today. We need deeper people. When I hear a person that has depth, I forget what time it is. I'm ready to listen. And I think mentoring builds depth.
A couple months ago, we were at lunch, and I'd just seen Austin, who had come back from his time with you. I think it was probably 5 or 6 months ago. You had decided to mentor both Austin and Parker, to spend time with them on Saturdays.
2 grandsons.
Yeah. Going through the book of David.
Yeah.
And week after week, I saw these changes occurring, even in both of them. And I thought, I don't think we talk about mentorship like we need to talk about that in the church or even in life. There's a lot said about coaching and about life coaching, but there's not a lot said about mentorship. Now, you say a lot about that as you preach, the men who meant so much to you through various stages of your life.
Right. I was going to say the reason I would mention it is that man was, if you will, my reason for making it through those 16 months I was on the island of Okinawa as a Marine. And he was with the navigators. Bob Newkirk was the navigator representative. And I don't know that he ever used the word mentor.
Right.
He and I just had the right chemistry, and it flowed as we got to know each other, and I realized he has so much that I need and is so willing to spend time. I realized later that's why he was there. That's what those navigator reps do when they're near a military base or wherever. And he said to me, let's play some handball together. Back then, that was the sport. Not racquetball, but handball. And I'd never played the game before. He was very good at it. And while we were doing that, we would talk about all kinds of things, as you will often do when you're playing a game together. And that led to further involvement. And he got me involved in a scripture memory program. And then we got to know more about each other's lives and families. And I met his wife and their kids. And it was life with life, is the best way to put it.
Well, when we were talking about mentoring that lunch, and you said you lived with them part of the time, I thought that's one of the massive differences that we miss so much today. You're behind the scenes.
When you say lived with them, I would spend maybe the weekend with them. Yeah, I was on the base and had to return, but if there was some liberty that I could enjoy, and which was often true, I would say to him, "Hey, I'm available the next 2 days. He'd say, come on over." So I'd do whatever they were doing with as the family.
And they had kids?
Yeah, they had 3 children. They were small.
So you saw them parent?
Yeah, and it was, we had no children. Cynthia and I had been married 2 years almost when I was sent overseas. And so it was a delight to share their family life and they with me and get to know about my background. And I mean, it was the most natural unfolding of our situation, really mine, because he was at home. He lived in Naha, capital city of Okinawa. And I would leave my base and get there and go up to his house and we'd spend time together. Or I'd meet him somewhere. We'd have supper together or maybe lunch together, or he'd come to a parade I was in. I was in the Marine Corps 3rd Division band, and he liked the music we played, and we was involved in that. So all different realms of life, you fit it in when there's a mentoring relationship. It's not that structured. You kind of go with it in each other's life.
Well, I think that's very interesting because it's important, especially today, to define the difference between coaching and mentoring. And I found this summary. It says a coach and a mentor are very different roles. A life coach is a person who's task and performance-oriented. Life coaching aims to develop a skill or a task for something they want to pursue in life. However, mentorship involves developing the person and a solid foundation.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Creating a partnership rather than being performance-driven. It's developmentally driven.
Yeah.
Life coach is about setting a time. You pay the person for a specific time, for a specific task to develop usually a work skill.
Mm-hmm.
Mentoring is a long-term, fluid relationship that focuses on the internal values and core of a person. And that's what you had.
Mm-hmm.
But you were willing and desirous. What makes a person willing to enter that relationship? Because it's constructive, but it's also refining.
Sure it is. I think one of the things is you have needs, and you see in the other person the ability to help you meet those needs. I was lonely. Yeah. I was away from my bride, your mother, in years to come when we began to have our children. But back then, she was almost like a newlywed with me, and I with her, and we were suddenly separated. Well, there's loneliness with that. There's 8,000 miles difference between us, and I never heard her voice during those months I was away. Phone calls were too expensive, and there was no internet, there was no computer. But I had my friend, Bob, who understood it. He had been in the Navy. He understood distance from home and all. And he had answers for my questions. He never tried to be the answer man. There's a difference.
Yes.
Yeah. He was a good listener. He had a great sense of humor. And we would do things together, and there was harmony in our doing them. And I realized later he had a purpose in it that I didn't see on the front end, that worked its way out into the development of some character traits that I needed to develop in my own life. And it was marvelous. I just don't have another word for it. It changed my life.
I looked at the disciples. As I prepared for our time together, and how for 3 years, Jesus lived with these guys. And not one of them had a degree. Not one. I mean, a tax collector couldn't even be in a court of law or enter the church, the synagogue.
Sure.
And yet Matthew, he's spending day in and day out, day in and day out.
Right.
And then calling Peter and James and John, fishermen.
Yeah.
So it's not looking at someone and saying, this task, this is for success. It's for your development, because Jesus knew I'm leaving.
Right.
And now I want to pass this on. How would you be different today without the mentors that you had in your life?
Huh. I don't know where to start. It impacts every part of my life, really. Some of the insights I have now, I gleaned from those months that I had with him. Many of the techniques that I use in the study of the scriptures, I first picked up from him, and then I perfected during my 4 years at a seminary. But those foundational tools you learn from another person, like a mentor, they go with you. You know, his notes fill the margin of my Bible. You know, it says in the scriptures that Jesus chose 12 that they might be with him and that he might send them forth to preach. Mark 3:14. That they might be with him. There it is. He was with them. You forget, they slept alongside him. They ate with him. They listened to him. They watched him when he performed miracles, healing different people. They saw him under the gun as criticism came and the Pharisees landed on him. They watched him as he kept his cool when being assaulted verbally by others. You learn from that. And when you're the recipient of that, you drink that in. That's what you would see if you could watch my two grandsons and me together when we meet on Saturday mornings. I mean, sometimes they're just writing as fast as they can write. Other times they're sitting still and pondering, listening. They're hearing what I'm sharing and they're thinking about their lives, I'm sure. And sometimes they'll bring that up. And there's no subject that's off limits because everything is confidential. And there is no issue that's out of bounds, no struggle that I say, no, we're not going to worry about that. Oh, we worry about that. I call it what it is. I may say, I struggle with that too.
There's vulnerability.
You do? Yeah. So there's vulnerability. That's a big part of it. I don't think that would be true with a consultant.
Right.
Your brother, our oldest, Kurt, the other night we were having dinner with Kurt and Deb, and Kurt said to me, people often think I'm in consulting work. He said, I'm not. I'm a coach.
Yes.
And in a sense, there's a difference. A consultant gives information, evaluates, and even analyzes a situation and then gives direction. He said, I ask questions. And that's what I do often. We're coming up on a chapter in the David book where it's titled, Being Big Enough to Forgive. It's a big part of what David needed to learn, and he learned it well. One of my questions is going to be to both Parker and Austin, who do you need to forgive? And I would even probably go further and say, why haven't you already? So we talk about what holds us back from forgiving.
Were you afraid of those kind of questions?
Probably at first. I'd never been around anyone that could drill in so deeply and comfortably. So I think I learned not to be afraid because they were never threatening type questions.
And it
or judgmental type questions.
It produced in you qualities that you wanted to develop.
Yeah, and you know what else? He loved me.
Yeah.
And I love him. He's gone now, so I have to remember it's in the past tense. But we loved each other. When you love, you talk truth. And nothing frees you like truth.
I think one of the things I miss in the church a lot of times is when Titus is talking about the elders and the older women teaching the younger women, the older men teaching younger men. Mentorship is that's really mentorship, or mentoring someone is the humility.
Paul with Timothy, that was a mentoring relationship.
We actually got a comment the other day that I just had to read to you because I love it. Life also has had a way of refining And those mentors have helped you along the way in that refining process. But this person says, I just want you to know, I like the older Chuck best. I've been with the young Chuck, the middle-aged Chuck, and now the older Chuck. God's wisdom flows through Chuck to me on daily walks, on car rides, and at other times. I'm older now, and I'm no longer in a hurry. And so the word...
That's a great pause. Let's pause right there. As you age, your hurrying slows down. And you realize the value of even silence or time to think it through, not trying to finish the other person's sentence. Go ahead, I interrupted you.
Well, he's no longer in a hurry, and I think that is a critical point. And so the word sculpted messages sink deeper into my heart and mind. I thank God for Chuck often, and I discuss his sermons in prayer. I ponder each word, and I pray that Chuck will climb into that pulpit another Sunday. But that's the mulling process. How can we as individuals and as congregations slow the pace, silence the noise, and enter into one another's lives? You made yourself available to the boys.
Right. I think we have to be fully convinced of its value and also acknowledge and even admit the drawbacks of rushing through this, hurrying through that. Most of those things you forget about in a matter of minutes or maybe hours. Things you really took time with, things you pondered, thought through, struggled through, came to terms with, they linger. They stay, they have staying power. I think also knowing that they're valuable, you teach yourself to pace yourself rather than always staring at your wrist to see what time it is. You realize what we're doing right now is like time is standing still. When I'm with the boys, I refer to them often as the boys. They're both men in their 30s, and neither is married, so they have that in front of them. But they're unusual because they're willing to listen. And you'll never be learning what you could learn if you're not willing to listen. And that takes some discipline because we're in a day where waiting for anything is... I read somewhere that he's so nervous about life, he doesn't want to miss one panel of a revolving door. But miss it. Relax. Let the wonder in. Life includes teaching moments where there are no words. Socrates said on one occasion, there are times that words are stupid things. You've seen it. You've been around it. People who have too many answers for your struggles. Something wonderful about a person that just comes and sits alongside you and simply says, I care so much about what you're going through. They don't offer advice. They don't tell you what the next steps will be. They don't quote 3 verses. They don't try to impress you with what they've been through by saying, I understand. Anyone who's never lost a child should never say to someone who just did, I understand. No, you don't. You never lost a child. If you've never gone through, a stillbirth, don't act like you know all about the grief of that, because you don't. So say that. I can't imagine the grief of giving birth to this precious soul you were looking forward to spending a lifetime with. And he or she was stillborn. Take time. Take time. Mentoring is not a sprint, it's a marathon.
And often your meetings are like 3 hours.
Oh, they are. And I forget what time it is.
So do they, yeah.
Yeah, they do. I don't know that I've seen them look at their watch. In all these months, we've met more than 2 or 3 times. And one was when one had an appointment and he had to be to. But we're not there to, we got 15 minutes. Okay, go ahead, say it. It's life with life. It's when you sit down with your son or daughter and you know some things need to be talked through, you talk them through. Mm-hmm. And you give them time to tear up if they tear up. I often tell people that cry in my presence, they'll often apologize. And I say, please, please. Tears are some of the most eloquent statements of our lives. God gave us tear ducts, not just to moisten our eyes, but to let our emotions out. I respect tears. I'll tell my wife, when you tear up, you need to know something. I'm all ears, because it gets to me. I just can't take the tears when I know you hurt that deeply. Well, men cry too, but as you get older, you toughen up. Why? I know there's a reason for discipline. My life's driven by discipline, but there are also times that I lose it. I'm going to give a devotional here at Insight for Living for our board meeting. I always begin the board meeting with a devotional. I'm speaking on Worthy is the Lamb. I start with a story of the man who wrote that called me and said, I want you to hear this. And he played it. Then he sang it for me. And he hung up the phone. Worthy is the Lamb that was slain. So I checked it out. It's in Revelation 5:14, where, get this, millions and millions and millions of angels are bowing before the throne. And in the center is the Lamb that was slain. And in antiphonal voice, they're singing to him. You are the one who is worthy. Well, I'm going to try to get through that without too many tears, but I can't get through it all. It touches me.
Why would you try to get through it without tears?
Well, I don't want to blubber, and just stand there and do nothing but weep. But I want them to hear enough to know how touching it is. Mm-hmm. He alone is worthy to be praised. He alone is worthy of our everything. So it's not about us. In this narcissistic age where everything is about me, give me a break. None of it is about me. It's about the Lamb. Worthy is the Lamb.
What are you concerned about as you look over the past 60 years of ministry?
the drift of our culture and the impact it has on young minds before they even have a chance to get on their own 2 feet. The culture is already doing a number on them. They can handle a phone better than they can find their way through a verse of Scripture. Mm-hmm. They don't even talk. They punch letters, and they call that friends. That's not a friend. Friend is one that you bleed together, you feel together, you enter into life together, you care together. As a result, you deepen together. See, I don't think we need richer people today or brighter people today. We need deeper people. When I hear a person that has depth, I forget what time it is. I'm ready to listen. And I think mentoring builds depth. Back to our time with each other, I know that marriage is in front of both of them. If the Lord has a marriage for them in mind, they may go through life single. I don't know. But if they don't, marriage is on this earth the largest change you'll ever experience. Well, there's no policy handbook. There's no, when this happens, then do this. Signed, God. He doesn't do that. He gives us principles. He gives us precepts. The precept is speed limit, 40 miles an hour.
A law.
That's a statement. Mm-hmm. Principle, or the whole idea of the generality of it, is drive slowly. Slowly may mean 35, it may mean 15. But when you get in a school zone, they don't leave it up to a principal. They give you a precept. Don't go over 20. You do, you'll be stopped. God gives us precepts on some things. Don't have sex with those who are not your marriage partner. That's pretty clear. It says it several times in the Scriptures. It's not what the culture says. Culture says, hey, come on. I could go all over this place with that one, but these young men that I'm mentoring are hearing that all the time. And they're handsome, charming, intelligent, and very capable young men. Who wouldn't want one of them as a sex partner if that's your drive as a woman? So I warn them. Watch out for the lustful woman. Watch out for seduction. Set your own boundaries. Don't compromise, no matter what. I know what I'm talking about. 8,000 miles away from home for 16 months. Cynthia would have never known. I would have known. She deserves better than that. I vowed that I would not know any other woman for the rest of my years. And I've kept those vows by God's grace. I want them to also. I want them to know marriage is that important. Well, I don't think you can just teach that. I think you mentor that area. You
have to experience life together.
You do. You do.
In fact, I was reading in one of the books, when you were graduating from the seminary, and you sat before Stan Toussaint, Charles Ryrie, and Dwight Pentecost. for 3.5 hours.
About 4 others also, yeah.
And at first,
I was alone. There was nobody else being
and I'm going
ordained
I'm
with
going
me.
somewhere to connect this with that statement
Right.
about life. But your first question, from memory, outline the book of Ezekiel and describe how you would preach through the prophetic work for a modern audience. I don't even know how long Ezekiel is. The next one, what are the most significant literary differences between the Synoptic Gospels and the book of John, or the Gospel of John? How does Matthew present the kingdom of God? And how does it help identify Jesus in relationship to the kingdom? Why would they have Jonah, who was such a rebellious prophet, used by God? Well, you can answer those in your head.
Yeah.
But what about talking to Jonah the rebel, that they would call a rebel? Who would want to do what God asked him to do anyways, is my question. I mean, how you can answer that academically, well, because this and this, but as a mentor, how do you answer that?
Well, I remember that ordination exam.
I bet you do.
Yeah, very well, almost 2 hours. And they weren't against me. They weren't there to watch me fail. They wanted me to do well, but it wasn't fun and games. I'd been 4 years at a seminary, and it was time to put up or admit I don't know.
And that's wise to know.
Yeah.
But then now you hear Jonah, a prophet, a rebel, or doubting Thomas, which I think he always gets the bad rap on that.
Yeah. I don't think it was doubting. I think it was a reflective
Absolutely.
Christian. And interesting, when the Lord saw him, if I may sidetrack here, he said, Thomas, my hands, my feet, touch them. He didn't say, I've had enough of this doubting. He doesn't do that. He understood Thomas' makeup, and he spent 3 years with him and more. So he said, Thomas, here. You know what Thomas does? My Lord, my God. Just worshiped him. He just needed the reassurance. He didn't want to get it from anybody else. So there are people like that. When I was younger, I would handle Jonah one way, and I look at notes from early sermons on those passages, and I think, oh, man, can't believe anybody listened to me back then. I still have a hard time believing they listen, but amazingly they do. But as I often have said, back then had answers to questions nobody was asking. So I had solutions to issues that weren't really issues. Now, I've lived long enough. I'll be 90 this year. And I've lived long enough to know, I think, finally, what the essentials are. And there are far more non-essentials. Longer I live, the less I die quickly for so many things.
Okay,
Yeah.
like what?
Yeah.
Like names them. Non-essentials.
Oh, non-essentials. It would be, what do you serve for communion? Wine or grape juice. Non-essential would be, should the women wear hats to church or not? Non-essential would be, can a woman usher at a church? Are you going to tell me there's going to be a church split over this? When they don't even mention, well, James does, but most don't even mention an usher in a church, though ushers are important, or whatever. There are lots of non-essentials, and we've made them into, and that leads to legalism. So...
And a lack of vulnerability. Because if you make a mistake, oh, my.
Oh, yeah, well, you got to hide it then. Right. And you got to live in secrecy. And rules, all those rules. No mixed bathing. I think they mean mixed swimming, but they call it mixed bathing.
Mixed bathing. Well,
Yeah,
that could
right,
be
yeah.
that could be an essential.
That's pretty intimate experience, but it's another subject. Or length of skirt, or whether you can go to movies on Sunday, or whether that's the stupidest issue. Would Jesus really care if you're in a movie on Sunday afternoon or evening? Well, ask some preachers, and it's whether you can be a member of this church or not. Now, he'll sit up half the night and watch a movie on television, but he may not do it. And, that kind of thing. I've long since shrugged my shoulders at most of that. When I wrote The Grace Awakening, it was like, well, I'm going to get in the neck for this. But I didn't. I didn't. The letters I got, you wouldn't believe them. People talk about, oh, thank you for writing that. I really said to Cynthia, be ready, honey. We're going to get some hot mail on this.
Well, it starts out with the words, there are killers on the loose.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
and they are.
But you know what?
Legalists
That's what we were going through.
Legalists are killers.
Yes.
They're grace killers. They don't free you. They put you into bondage. They hold you under guilt. When that doesn't work, they bring the screws down tightly with shame. Shame on you. Jesus didn't do that. Does that ever change anybody? That makes them afraid. That keeps them away from you. We had a young man come to our church covered with tattoos. He was down front with his girlfriend, and he walked up with a big smile and gave me a crushing hug. I knew he'd been lifting weights a long time, and I said, man, you are one strong dude. He said, I've been in prison for 15 years, and I listened to your broadcast. And he starts to tear up. Here I go again, tears. And he said, I can't thank you enough. Mm. I live for the day that I'd be out and could come and meet you. Thank you for introducing me to Christ and for telling me about, he said, what's that? Grace. He had to think about it for a moment. And I gave him a hug back, and I said, you're welcome here anytime. Well, I found out later that when he went to his car to get in, the lady in the car next to him said to his girlfriend, you could tell your friend that not to come back. He's not our type. And he's never come back. Is that heartbreaking or what? I even had our friend Bryant go see him and take a Bible to him and apologize. And they thanked us, but the girlfriend said, no thanks. We won't be coming back. One ugly statement.
One ugly statement.
What she said, because she saw tattoos. It's a non-essential. And when you make them essential, you become a legalist. I wish I could know who that woman was, because I would privately have a very genuine conversation to help her know she's moving in the wrong direction. That doesn't represent who we are. That's not grace. I mean, the fact that he even came after 50 years in prison.
And it's the day he looked forward to.
Right.
But this is, like you said, I preach differently now than I used to. And I can say, because life has filed and filed and filed, and there has been suffering. Yeah. I remember when Jonathan was born, and we didn't have a child with disabilities in our family. I didn't know what that was even like. And I thought I had all the answers as a mom. Oh, I'm going to raise these kids, and I'm going to do this and this and this. We'll have summer reading, and we're going to have a schedule. And then this child can't comprehend all that.
Right.
But is loved by God.
Yeah.
And is welcome in our family.
Right.
And yet, the heartbreaking discussions we would have over his brain scans or
right.
the hospitalizations. And now when you preach on Jonathan and Mephibosheth,
yeah.
It's in your heart. I think that's what mentoring you're talking about.
Yes, and I'm going to pick up on your comment about life, and I'm going to use a phrase from Philip Yancey, one of my favorite Christian writers. Life has a grinding power. I'm going to pause and let that sink in. My mentor, Bob Newkirk, taught me when you run across the word Selah in the Psalms, just think in your mind, pause, and let that sink in. This is one of those Selah moments, grinding power. Only other mothers who go through what you go through and have gone through for these almost 30 years with our dear Jonathan understand that grinding power. Well, when I go through my realm in life and the struggles that we've gone through as a family and as an individual, it hones you. And it breaks you. There's no room for arrogance or pride. My first year in seminary, I was sitting in this first row of the chapel, and I was listening to the very fine mission speaker from another seminary who was a guest. And I don't remember his subject or anything. I remember one line. It'll stay with me all my life. When God wants to do an impossible task, he takes an impossible person and crushes him. I've been crushed. You have been crushed by life's grinding power.
And sometimes it doesn't stop.
Oh. No. And God plans not only, get this, not only the depth of a test, but the length of it. Mm-hmm. Some of them are pretty much lifetime. Some of them are 10-year. Some of them longer, some of them less. The depth is there, but the length, it goes on and on and on. Well, there's no way you could put that into words, you know. And then as a preacher, as an expositor of the scriptures, that bleeds into what I'm going to say when I deliver a message. I can't help it. It's just part of who I am.
Well, I think one of the wonderful things about the ministry that you've had is welcoming those passages, those grinding experiences, because in 2007, I came to work at Insight to care for families with special needs, which would have never, ever been a part of the ministry, most likely. I mean, God could use anybody. But we got a letter the other day from someone because of what was put together in the newest release of Paws and Tails. Paws and Tails is another outlet or ministry that we love.
I love this story.
I always want to work with Paws and Tails. But the writer...
This is the greatest story.
Dave Carl just says, God is crazy in love for his children and has that childlike heart.
Yeah.
and just released one of the newest series. And a woman wrote in and she said, "Oh, thank you. Thank you. I have 5 children and we've been listening to Paws and Tales for years. My oldest is now almost 12. We've been listening since he was so little, and we love it. I waited for the new episode with great anticipation. As my 5th was born last year, we discovered she had a diagnosis of Down syndrome, her 5th child and her youngest, who's now turning 1. Well, you can imagine to our amazement when we listened to the new episode yesterday. I was driving with all of them, and as the story was building, I knew something was going to be very different about the baby in the story. I did not expect it to be exactly what our family has experienced. We were all overcome with emotion, and it was good and healing in ways I cannot explain. As we listened to the rest of the story, we were in awe of the parallels that fit so perfectly into our lives. And I thank you for allowing my baby girl into the message." So we have to see purpose in it.
When I hear that, I want to go, Selah. Pause and let that sink in. The Lord was so great when he was mentoring his own. And they were often impatient. They were often short-sighted, like we can all be. And he said to them on one occasion, "Oh man, inasmuch as you've done it to the least of these, my brothers, you've done it unto me." Let me teach a little Greek here. There's a syntactical phrase called a restrictive attributive. You don't need to remember that, but it's in the wording of the Greek sentence, the emphatic part of the verse is placed on the adjective. So it could be read, "Inasmuch as you have done it unto these, even the least of these, my brothers, you've done it unto me." Another one, "I'm the vine, even the true one." Translated, "I'm the true vine." "I'm the good shepherd. I'm the shepherd, even the good one." Those are all restrictive attributives, and they highlight the adjective. In this case, I love them all, especially those Down syndrome children and a host of other special needs, which has caused us in our church to really focus on and highlight the value of ministering to those with special needs, some of whom are toddlers and some of whom are in their 30s and 40s.
Mm-hmm. And it is stretching.
You were there when we began it.
Yes, and it is part of that honing, that grinding.
The grinding power of life. Yeah, there it is. And all those parents. So we, as you know, you probably planned it at the start, we give them a parents' night out. So we keep their children, their offspring, special needs, and give them the night to have dinner, go to a movie.
A break.
Sit in the car and talk, lie on the blanket under the stars, and just let the wonder in. Mm-hmm. Breathe freely for just a few hours. There's compassion in that. I commend you for not just learning life and how to deal with it with your special needs son, our grandson, but turning it around and developing your whole reframing ministry, where you've had to do that in your life. Toby and your husband has had to do that in his life. And you do that as a couple. It's just second nature. I remember we would plan an evening and you'd call at the last minute and you say, I'm just probably not going to be able to come. Jonathan just had a seizure. We need to be here with him. Absolutely. Inasmuch as you have done it unto them, even the least of them, you've done it to me. I loved it when we were at Oberammergau and they were having the story of Jesus portrayed in real life there in Germany and played by people in the town. And the opening scene, Jesus is simply kind of playing chase with the kids. And you never think about Jesus, playing chase with the kids. Somebody said to me when we were in Israel, and there are a lot of banana trees, you ever thought of Jesus peeling a banana and eating a banana? Yeah, probably a sight very few would think of.
Yeah. I think that's why The Chosen has meant so much to
so
many.
Good. Exactly.
Because it's real.
Yeah. The imagination is allowed to run freely so that, maybe a guy belches. and he doesn't say, excuse me, and Jesus kind of lifts his eyebrows and goes on. Or maybe Jesus does. I guess he would. I think he snored when he slept. Has anybody ever mentioned that? I don't think so. Now, I think he sometimes dived in the water and took a swim when everybody else wanted to be fishing because he liked having fun too. Where are the pictures of Jesus just laughing with his head thrown back, and the disciples had to be at times hilarious with the things they would come up with. He must go, oh, it's real. This is part of what mentoring will do in a life. It will help you become real. Not worried about what folks are going to think. Cynthia and I have this conversation all the time. We need to care less about what they think. My job is not to teach what they want to hear. My job is to teach what they need to hear. So I can't care what they think. So what if a whole family gets up and walks out? Let them walk out. Then Cynthia said, they may have a flight they've got to catch. And that's why they've left. Who am I to judge why they walk out of the church? Or maybe a guy leaves angry. Well, he's got room to be angry at me. I don't lose sleep over that. I don't know what the story is in his life. He may live with a horrendous issue. He may have been abused growing up and never dealt with his rage when any kind of authority figure emerges. Maybe that's it. See, early in my life, I wouldn't have thought like that. Age helps. Being mentored helps. Being corrected helps. One of my mentors, Howie Hendrick, said to me on one occasion, Chuck, you got a great, we were alone, but it was appropriate. You got a great sense of humor, Chuck, but sometimes it's at someone else's expense. I'll never forget that. He was right on. A mentor can say that.
Because he loves you.
You're not offended. You know why he says it? Because he loves me. He doesn't want me to embarrass people in my humor. He said, when you use humor, use yourself as the brunt of the joke. What great What a great piece of counsel.
Years ago, well, maybe not that many years ago, when we ran together 6 days a week for 3 years,
Yeah.
that was the mentor-like relationship that I will never forget.
Yeah, I remember it well.
Putting those shoes on, some mornings and one of the things I remember the most is you saying, every first mile is the hardest mile. Every single time.
It's true.
And now when I try to run, I'm like, every first mile is the hardest mile every time. And it is. And if I get past the first, because I learned as we ran side by side, we could do this.
Right.
But some of those miles I couldn't have done without you.
You were going through a real tough time during one of those years. And I remember I finally said, let's just stop here.
Yep.
Let's just.
I remember where we were.
Yeah. I said, Colleen, the most important voice is the Spirit of God's voice that you live with. He lives within you since you're a child of His. But the second is your own voice and what you tell yourself. So be careful what advice you're giving yourself or what statements you're making to yourself. You're very important to God. And even though you may feel dreadful right now, or you may have done something you wish you had not have done, don't we all? Just be careful that you don't condemn yourself, because He doesn't condemn us. He may discipline us. He may, and certainly does, correct us. But there is therefore now no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. He doesn't condemn. We condemn ourselves.
It's one of the most life-changing moments of my life. I will never forget it. And it was 3 years that we ran, but that day, like Howie Hendricks saying to you, or this man speaking, I don't remember what it was about. It was one line. And that's the power of mentoring and being mentored.
It is. It is.
It's not about all the lines. It's the one moment.
Yeah. And you know what else? And I know you include this. It's not just a line. It's a life. What's remembered when you lay someone to rest and they're gone forever? And the only thing left is a granite tombstone, is the memory of a life. And that shadow crosses your mind frequently. And you remember the turn of a phrase or a laugh or some moment you shared together. My mentor, Bob, always had room for me, even though I know he had his own issues. You have to. 3 children living on an island where the water's turned off at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It won't be back on till 9 the next morning. Well, you do have to flush if you only had water. So you can imagine having a bunch of guys over on Friday night for Bible study, and there's no water. So he's got issues. He's got stuff he has to deal with. Never once heard him complain about it. Never once. So I mentioned that to him. Good night, man. He said, you know, Chuck, if my life revolved around whether the water flows or not, I'd be complaining every afternoon. So what? That was a wonderful moment of mentoring. I learned a great deal. Now that I'm losing sight in my eyes with glaucoma, Left eye's pretty blind. Right eye's starting to be affected. I said to Cynthia recently, you know, I learned from Newkirk, and I'm quoting him now, even though that was 57, 58. Think about that. Years ago, and I can quote it like I just heard him.
Amazing.
Even though that's happening to me, I'm not going to become a cranky old man.
Mm-hmm.
I promise you that. I will not spend my life complaining. Now, do I wish I had good eyes? Of course I do. Of course I do. But I learned from my mentor that, you know, when you take life by the yard, it's hard. When you take it by an inch, it's a cinch. And so he said, just take it for today.
I mean, even parent-child relationships turn into, hopefully, mentoring kind of relationships, if the refining process continues and is welcomed. And one of the things in being over at your house, I noticed, even this last year, you don't complain.
No, I don't. No.
You and Mom sit at the meal 3 times a day.
Yep. Together.
Yes.
Yep, we do.
I felt so convicted. I thought I better stop eating at my counter. They sit down and eat.
Standing up.
Yes, with the TV on. They sit down and eat, and Dad can hardly see to get his fork in the food.
I did knock a glass over the other day. And I said, I feel like I'm 4 years old.
Yeah,
Back then, I knocked glasses over regularly, but now
I've seen a few.
Now I don't see them.
I know. I've seen a few broken things.
Yeah, I know.
But you know what? So what?
Yeah, I was putting a glass, we'd finished doing the dishes, and I was putting the glass up on the shelf. I thought the shelf was there, and I let it go, and it goes, 8,495 pieces, and it was 4:30 in the morning. I was trying to be real quiet, you know.
No way.
So Cynthia walked in like, there's just been an explosion. I said, well, except for having glass all over the place, ankle deep, everything's fine. So we were vacuuming up glass for the next 30, 40 minutes.
That's life.
So what? So what? At least we have each other. At least we have water. At least we have food. And you know, when it's over at the church for me, it's over. It's not like, oh, it's just terrible. I'm not able to preach anymore. Come on, grow up. They've listened to you for 60 plus years. That's enough for 2 lifetimes. When it's over, it's over. Corey ten Boom taught me, hold it all loosely. Hold everything loosely, Pastor Swindoll, because if you don't, it will hurt when the Father pries your fingers and takes it from you. So I hold it loosely. It's not about me. I've never once called our congregation my people.
I know.
Yeah, they're not my people. You kidding? They're God's people. This isn't my church. It's God's church. This isn't my Bible. It's God's book. And when that may sound like it's an insignificant difference. No, it's huge. It's huge. He's the Lord of the church. The pastor isn't. Thank goodness. He leads this flock.
Thank goodness.
We are the sheep of his pasture. He is our shepherd.
I think you want more than anything to be remembered. How?
Oh. I've never thought about that very much. Someone who loved his wife and loved his children every day of his life. Someone who loved God sincerely, consistently. Someone who was real. Those kind of things are important to me. Back again, when you're mentored, it's funny. I'll interrupt that thought and come back to it. I can often tell when people have not been mentored, and you can too. They lack a number of the insights that work in life. So while you're being mentored, you're being prepared.
Yes.
For whatever. Bob Newkirk never mentored me for 4 kids. He didn't know how many kids I was going to have. We had none when I was there. Bob Newkirk never mentored me for the churches I've served. I didn't know I was even going to be in a church back then. Just one day he says to me, "You know what, Chuck? I like the way you led the meeting tonight." He's driving me back to the base. And I go, "Oh, wow, thanks." And he said, "You know, you're a natural." I had no clue what that meant. I did not have a clue. I go, "Well, what's that?"
A natural at what?
Yeah, he said, "Chuck, man, you get up there and you just, you." I go, "Well, yeah." He said, "But it's just so refreshing. I just love it when you're there." He said, "So sing to me." He always loved it when I would sing, because he couldn't sing worth a toot. And I would, his favorite was, "Holy, holy is what the angels sing. And I expect to help to make the courts of heaven ring. But when I sing redemption's story, they will fold their wings. For angels never felt the joy my salvation brings." So he'd say, "Okay, before we get to Courtney," my base was Camp Courtney, he would say, "Kate, sing that thing on the angels don't have as good a deal as we do."
That's great.
And I said, "You want to sing with me?" He says, "I don't want to ruin it. You just sing it." So I'd sing at the top of my voice. Worthy is the Lamb. The angels sing. Millions upon millions of angels sang, will sing. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. It helps to remember that we're not the ones who are worthy. We worship the one who is worthy. That enables us to accept what he sends our way, that it causes us to be grateful for whatever. I remember when Cynthia and I had in our bank account, I think we had $8.20-something when we first came to the seminary. We lived in a little campus, 9 apartments, all 4 years, and we didn't have an air conditioner. I remember I said, after we read Hudson Taylor's story on the forming of China Inland Mission, I learned that Taylor didn't share with the public the specific needs. He brought it before the Lord. And so I said, we need an air conditioner. So let's just ask the Lord for it. Let's don't tell our folks. Let's don't tell, a couple of rich friends in the church. Let's don't tell our pastor back home. Let's just pray. So she said, I love that idea. So she and I prayed all the way through a cold winter in Dallas, and summer was coming and it was spring, and we were visiting her folks before coming back to school. And the phone rang, and it was Richard Parks. I'll never forget the name, from our home church. And he asked my mother-in-law, Mrs. Parker, he said, is Chuck happen to be there, or are they already gone back to school? And she said, no, he's still here. He said, could I talk to him? And she said, sure. So he said, hey, Chuck, this is Richard Parks. I said, Mr. Parks, it's nice to talk to you. Do you need an air conditioner? I swear to you, that was exactly what he said. And I'm like holding back the tears thinking, oh, yes, sir, we could use an air conditioner. I'm going to bring it right over. We just put in central air, and I've got this almost new Fetters window air conditioner. I'll just put it in your trunk. And when you get there, you're going to need help because it's heavy. It's a 3/4. It puts out a 3/4 ton air conditioning. Somebody needs to help you put in the window. I said, oh, I'll get help. We put in the window, and then we turned that sucker on. We ran that thing. Winter, summer, forever. And every time I looked at it, I thought, God is worthy to be praised. He takes care of his own. He's a faithful Father. And ever since then, he's been meeting needs. And even at Inside for Living Ministries, he meets our needs. And we have no grant. We have no denominational background to pick up the tab. We have no, sugar daddy that sends, a couple of million when we need it. Nope. We have faithful donors that faithfully give because they have been encouraged and blessed by the ministry.
And it's been down to the last day.
Oh, when we first started.
Most of the time.
First started, true story. Cynthia and I had put in our last dime that we had saved, and we got on the air. And she said to me, we're going to need $75,000 to pay the airfare for being on the air, broadcasting his first month. And I said, let's tell the people. Folks, we need $75,000, and if God leads you to give, great. But if he doesn't, don't. It's up to you, however God leads you.
Because you kind of are dragging your feet on having a ministry anyways.
Yeah, I know.
You're kind of,
I wasn't too big on it anyway. Maybe he'll shut it down. Well, he didn't, because she said to me the day after that first month, she said, we got in $76,000. I took her. And we're in our bedroom there in our home in Fullerton. I took her in my arms. I said, remember the air conditioner? Yeah. He's done it again. He'll do it again. And again. When we meet, when he does it, we're through. When he meets our needs, we keep on. It's that simple. I love it like that. It's kind of a go or no go.
Because it's his.
So far, it's go. We started the Reframing ministry, and I said to Cynthia, how are we going to fund that? She says, God will fund it for us. He's in this, and he has. And you've watched your budget, and you always do. You were trained to do that, and you watch that going on here, and the need arises, and we make it known. If there's not a need, we don't make it known.
Well, it's interesting. In chapel just the other day, Carissa had gone to Brazil with a team, and there's only enough funds for them to work one day. but they work out of the Brazil office all kinds of hours and time. But they do that because God has provided for that day. And as they were departing, they hugged. Carissa said, I've never been kissed on my face so many times in my life. From Brazil, everyone hugged and kissed and kissed. And the gal said, we're going to be alone again. And she said, oh no, we're family.
Yeah.
This is a ministry. We do this together.
Yeah. She's right.
That's really what it is about.
Yeah, it is. It's great. We're not in this alone. You kidding? And we've seen it this year, 45 years. 45 years. Never been underwritten, never, ever been promised anything way in advance. But God moves in the hearts of those who are blessed, and the ministry has ministered to them. And the most natural thing in the world is, let me contribute to your staying at it.
Which contributes to it going around the world. I just read that the STS studies, Searching the Scripture study that they've put into this Vision 195, 11 languages. 11 languages.
Isn't that amazing?
I didn't know
11 languages.
But that's going back to your mentoring time. The people who helped you come along. Yeah. So you help them come along with a lot of grace.
Yeah. I love that. It's great to do it together, isn't it?
Now, how does that song end? How does that song go where the angels get the worst deal? Or we get a better deal than the angels? What are the words to that?
Holy, holy, holy is what the angels sing. And I expect to help the courts of heaven ring. But when I sing redemption's story, they will fold their wings. For angels never felt the joy that my salvation brings. You see, angels are not saved. They're elect angels. So they're created already in God's kingdom. Only humans know the joy of being redeemed from sin. Angels watch that with I love it that they fold their wings. It's a beautiful thought. Thank you for faithfully doing what you do.
Well, thank you for this time, Dad.
I've loved it.
You're folding your wings around the boys.
I'm no angel.
Well, I know that. I didn't say that. I am saying, though, that you are coming around, and it's changing their lives. It's affecting who they reach out to.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I love the story about the woman who gave birth to Down syndrome. And here we were in Paws and Tails presenting a similar story. Isn't that amazing? And Dave Carl, who is the genius behind our Paws and Tails, came up with that story, not knowing anything about this woman. I love that. The spontaneity of that is just too good.
And how God uses our, I guess it would be the powder that comes from the grinding.
Yeah.
That then touches other people's lives. And that's what you're doing with them. And what I hope Insight continues to do, I know they will, because it's your heart. Yeah.
I just want to say to all of you who listen to our broadcast that we remain a work of faith, and that may be a cliche to some of you and may not say this as strongly as I could, but we really are. Every month we begin with 0, 0. And whatever comes in is what we use, watch over carefully, handle with integrity, and give God praise for that.